God, please, no! No! No!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's Robbie Rhino, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at the first wheeled vehicle that has come to World of Tanks console, the French Tier 8 wheeled light tank, the EBR 75 MLE 1954. And apologies for not getting this video out any sooner. I live in a block of flats next to some building work that's going on, and if I put out the recording that I recorded yesterday, it would have sounded like I was in a war zone myself, so apologies for that. But I am here now, and it's given me an extra day's playtime, giving me a better impression of this vehicle, and I can give you a more in-depth opinion on how I think this vehicle performs and how I think the tech tree that is coming out next week will perform. So in this video I will give you a rundown of the statistics of this wheeled light tank. I will show you my commander and equipment setup. I have 3 replays for you showing you some cherry picked, fairly good games in my opinion for this vehicle, and I'll tell you whether I think it's worth the gold and how this tank performs compared to its sort of PC version of the tank. So as a premium vehicle, it earns 50% extra silver and 10% extra XP. The base gold value for this tank is 6,700 gold, which is quite low for a tier 8 vehicle, and I think it was mentioned on stream that the wheeled vehicles are still a little bit of a work in progress, even though this one has been released, so it might need a few tweaks, so maybe that's the reason for the lower price, but that's just me speculating. In terms of the statistics, it's got a low hit point pool at 950, and it's got abysmal view range at 310 meters. The reason for that is it's meant to be an active scout. You're meant to use the excellent concealment rating, the fast maneuverability, to get further in behind enemy lines and spot actively further and sort of deeper than a typical light tank should be able to. It kind of works, but it kind of doesn't in practice, and we'll talk about why in just a second with the mobility. So that leads us nicely on into the mobility. It's got a 525 horsepower engine. It's got a 35 power to weight ratio, and it seems really good, and it is, but it kind of contributes to the fact that this tank feels like it's sliding around all over the place. The traverse feels a little bit whack. It feels like it's not quite working correctly. It feels like you've got bald tires, or you're driving on ice and you're kind of hovering or floating above the ground. I know a little tweak was made on Wednesday, the day after it was released, so hopefully they'll make a few more tweaks and make it sort of feel like it traverses like it should do, from what I've seen on the PC version anyway. So this now leads us on to talking about the unique mechanic that comes with the wheeled vehicles, and that's the cruise mode and rapid mode. So if you don't know what they are, in cruise mode you go slower forwards and backwards than you do in rapid mode, but you are more accurate on the move and you can traverse a lot better. In rapid mode you can go 75 kilometers an hour forwards and backwards, and in cruise mode you can go 60 kilometers an hour forwards and backwards, and the fact that you can go forwards and backwards the same speed is really useful for getting out of harm's way. In a lot of situations it means you don't have to reverse into a position, or you don't have to sort of turn your tank around or your vehicle around and exit that way. You can just zoom off in one direction. To switch between the modes, you use the same button that you use on your controller layout to use the siege mode in the Swedish tanks or the Swedish tank destroyers, and there isn't a time penalty for switching between the modes. And now we come on to why the traverse is so difficult to sort of handle. and to get used to, and that's because the whole traverse in cruise mode is 60 degrees a second and it's only 43 degrees a second in rapid mode, whereas the turret traverse in cruise mode is 66 degrees a second and only 59.4 degrees a second in rapid mode. You also have a new statistic called max wheel steering angle that comes with the wheeled vehicles, and it's 33 degrees in cruise mode and 15 degrees in rapid mode, and all of these statistics basically mean it's just kind of feels like it's overtuned in cruise mode. It feels like sometimes you can overturn quite often even though you're not meaning to, and the sensitivity doesn't feel quite right, and in rapid mode you turn like a boat, and sometimes the vehicle would just randomly jolt off to one side, and I think that's sort of an error in the programming or something to do with the traction, so hopefully that gets fixed or looked at very soon. It's an extremely hard tank to learn how to handle, and it doesn't feel like it handles correctly, and sometimes it feels like it's got a mind of its own, but the basic premise is up close and personal circling tanks use cruise mode. To get from destination to destination you just use rapid mode and zoom backwards or forwards depending on which way you are facing. So now that leads us on to the gun, which is a 75mm 2-shot autoloader with a 1.5 second intraclip reload. The alpha damage is 175 on APCR and heat and 260 on its HE rounds, with the penetration is very low unfortunately at 180 on the APCR, 220 on the heat, but the HE penetration is actually quite good, 75, so if you get the sides and rear of lightly armoured vehicles you can make that work. The shell velocity is 1300, which is very nice for sort of leading targets on the APCR at longer ranges. However, with the heat in HE it's only 850 meters a second, so you'll have to adjust your lead accordingly, and be wary with the APCR you will lose a lot of penetration over distance, meaning that your poor penetration will get even worse if you're firing the APCR at longer ranges. You get a 9.5 second reload for both of the shells, meaning that you're not out of the barrel or not out of engagements for too long. The base DPM is 1909 with APCR and heat and 2836 if you can make the HE work. The aim time is really nice at 1.2 seconds, and that's the same in rapid and cruise if you're completely still. The accuracy is 0.38, and you can make that better with your commander and equipment, so it's not too bad with all of the 6.0 upgrades to the gun handling. In terms of gun depression and elevation, it's 8 degrees and 12 degrees respectively. 8 degrees is very workable depression wise, but elevation is typical French style. 12 degrees meaning that if you're shooting something above you and you're going down a slope, it's extremely hard to get your gun on target, so be wary of that. But it does carry plenty of rounds at 74 rounds of ammunition, meaning that you shouldn't run out, and the firepower isn't too bad in its tank, it's just the handling that makes it an awkward playthrough, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next two replays. So in the gameplay in the background or Westfield, which is a fantastic map for a tank like this, we've picked up 2.8k direct damage and 884 assistance. We finish MVP, and yeah, another a good result basically, and one that isn't an average kind of game in this tank. I don't want to sort of trick you. You do have awful games as well, like the clip I had at the start of this video, and we'll talk through a bit more about the play style as we head on now into the second replay of the video. So we're now into the second replay of the video, and we're here on steps, and I'd just like to talk you through a little bit about the armour, about the wheels themselves, and my equipment and commander setup, and then we'll get talking about the gameplay. So in terms of the armour, there isn't too much to say. From the front, the hull is 40, the turret is 30mm, and some parts of the side are like 16mm behind the wheel, so it doesn't hold up well to any type of ammunition, especially HE rounds. So if you see one of these and you have a fairly good HE pen, then fire at the turret and the hull and you should be able to penetrate and take these things out. And with 950 hit points, it won't last very long. So most of you might be wondering, how do you track these tanks? And the fact of the matter is, you can't track them like you would a tank with tracks because they have wheels. However, you can substantially slow these vehicles down. Each wheel is damaged individually, and with each damaged wheel, your speed will reduce, and if you damage all of the wheels, you will reduce your speed to 15% of the max speed, and you lose 90% of your power. That's if all wheels are damaged, and it just means that you're a sitting duck when you're out in the middle of an open field, and each wheel does repair itself one by one, so multiple wheels damaged will take longer to repair. So yeah, do bear that in mind if you're hoping to sort of track it dead. You can't do that, but you can substantially slow these wheeled vehicles down. So in terms of my equipment and commander setup, on my equipment I run advanced optics, advanced concealment and improved ventilation. The optics and concealment, I'm just trying to get the ratio between my concealment and my view range up as much as possible to be able to outspot my opponents. And the ventilation is, again, just adding all round sort of an extra 5% to the tank, but also I just want to get my view range up to the max it can possibly be, because it is absolutely abysmal at 310 meters. On my commander I run Sixth Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Camouflage Expertise and Muffled Shot. I want to try and improve my concealment, my view range, some gun handling perks, and Sixth Sense and Born Leader as usual are, in my opinion, necessary on pretty much every tank in the game. So with my equipment and my commander setup, I now have a 379 meters view range, if I can speak, and that is extremely poor, and that's with all the bells and whistles in terms of equipment and commander skills. And I have a 242 meter steel concealment, which is actually very nice, so it kind of negates itself, and it means that you still have to get into advanced locations to be able to spot tanks. And if there are multiple wheeled light tanks on your team, it's hard to compete with them for spot and damage. Just sometimes you are sort of resigned to play in a more passive sort of damage dealing role. And as you can see there's a little bug with the suspension. Sometimes it just bobs up and down, meaning aiming is extremely annoying and difficult, and hopefully that gets fixed very soon. So with the equipment and commander skills, I also have a DPM now of 2,212 with APCR and heat, and a DPM of 3,286 if I'm able to penetrate my HE rounds. It now has an 8.2 second reload for the two shells, a 1.15 second aim time, which is phenomenal, and the accuracy is usable at 0.34%. So that's all the sort of statistics and information about the tank, and now we'll look at the gameplay and sort of what I've been trying to do in this game and how I try and play this tank to get the most out of it. At the start of the battle I use my mobility and my speed to rush forward and try and beat the wheeled tanks to the front of the battle, and try and find some foliage or a bush or places with hard cover that I can pop up on a ridge line and spot the enemies. I use combat rations to improve my view range even more, and that's what I try and get the initial spots with. Then you can always fall back if you get spotted, and it's always nice to have that same forwards and reverse speed. You have to practice switching between the rapid and the cruise modes. It can be quite awkward depending on what button you've got that programmed to, and it's also hard to know when to use it. Sometimes it's better just to sit in rapid all of the time so you can get away quickly, because when you are still, that aim time is the same as the cruise mode. But if you're circling a tank, it's sort of medium to short distances, switch to cruise mode and you'll be able to traverse around them. However, be warned that it doesn't feel quite right. Sometimes it feels like it overturns, it turns where you don't want it to, and because they're wheels, you still, if you want to stop still, you have sort of some forward momentum still going on, and it can be really frustrating sometimes when you sort of push out in front of an enemy that you didn't mean to. So it takes a bit of time. You might want to adjust your sensitivity if you want to have a session in these wheeled vehicles, but I have a feeling they might be tweaked slightly, and I think it was mentioned, like I said in the first replay of this video, that these are kind of still a work in progress slightly, and some of the wheeled vehicles might be looked at in terms of their handling, because at the moment I feel like it's playable, but you're just better off playing something like a Vanguard or an ELC even 90. It has better camo rating, you have a higher clip potential, and you have just a lot better view range, and it means that you're able to spot more effectively. Also, if you look at the size of this vehicle, it's a lot larger than something like an ELC even 90, and it's an easy target to hit even if you're going at full speed. If you see here in the gameplay in the background on steps, we've managed to pick up 3.2k direct damage already, and I've switched to my HE rounds. I've kept my hit points, preserved them for the end, and I've managed to penetrate an HE round to the back of that Super Conqueror there, which is always very satisfying. And you have to sort of balance play in passive and aggressive. So in that game we finished with 3.5k direct damage, 179 assistance. We finished MVP. We get 1 kill and make a nice profit again. So we'll head on into the third and final replay, and I'll talk you through what I'm doing there, what I'm thinking, and ultimately whether I think this tank is worth it. So I will see you there in just a second. So we're now into the third and final replay of the video, and we're here on Thiepval Ridge, and this is a very good map for this vehicle. You want to have a map that is as large and open as possible with plenty of foliage and avenues to escape from the enemy, and this is a good indication of what kind of damage and assistance you can get if you play it sensibly and you try and get the most out of this tank. Like I said in the last replay, 950 hit points do not go very far, especially at tier 10. You're, one or two shot a lot of the time, so you have to balance your play style with aggression as well as points of being passive and knowing when to retreat and knowing points on the map. And in my opinion, this vehicle is not suited to a newer player or a player that doesn't like the sort of light tank gameplay or isn't comfortable with it. I highly recommend that if you want a taste of it, just to wait for the tech tree wheeled vehicles that are coming out next week and just give that a go before you purchase this. And even for veteran players, it's extremely hard to balance your playstyle right and get as much of an impact in battles as you hope for, basically. So here on Thiepval Ridge, we've come to this position in sort of J3 area. I know that a lot of mediums and heavies like to come to the corner that is just directly to the right of me as we speak now, and I just want to poke up on this ridgeline and use the bushes and try and spot all the enemies that are coming in. We have artillery on our team, so I'm trying to get as much assistance as possible. But now that my team have caught me up, I'm going to be struggling to get any more assistance, so I'm just trying to poke up and be as cheeky as I can whilst not getting spotted by this T110 E5. As you can see here, your temptation is, if you've obviously played the game for a while, to turn your sort of tracks, as it were, if you're a track tank, and turn around and run away that way. But you've just got to learn to go forwards and backwards into a position, and if you're spotted, you have to remember whether you're facing backwards or forwards, because sometimes I've thought I was the opposite way around and I've gone forwards to escape or gone backwards to escape and managed to go over a ridge and expose myself to the whole of the enemy team. So I'm trying to play as passively here and just get some damage in, because I know that I will get targeted or focused by the tanks, or I'm expecting to, because this is a new vehicle. People didn't want the wheeled vehicles in the game, or quite a substantial amount of players didn't want them in the game because they thought they'd be overpowered and completely broken. They are kind of broken, but in the wrong kind of way. They're broken in terms of their maneuverability and their handling and the traverse. But if that was fixed, I think they would be quite powerful, but on console they're not as good as they are on PC, and they're a lot easier to take out. And as you can see here, I'm having some driving problems. You can't turn your sort of tracks stationary, so if you want to move, you have to go forwards and backwards and sort of do 3-point turns, 8-point turns, depending on where you are. So you have to think about where you're going, what position you want to use, and your avenues of escape with this tank. And you want to use the mini-map. You want to, in my opinion, use the larger mini-map, especially for the wheeled vehicles, because you want to see your spotting range, and you want to see your camouflage circle, and you want to make sure that you can fire or you can spot whilst being undetected, because you don't have very many hit points, and although you have relatively good firepower, you have poor penetration, and you will meet quite a lot of tier 10 tanks and tier 9 tanks playing this vehicle. Just a thing to mention in terms of the wheeled vehicles that are coming out next week. Not all of them have this rapid and cruise mode. I can't remember which ones it is. I think it's tiers 7, 8, 9, 10, sorry. But yeah, you'll have to check that for yourself when they're released. I can't quite remember. I know that up until tier 9 you only have a 90mm as the highest caliber gun, and the top EBR 105 has a 105mm. So it's a bit of an acquired taste, this vehicle. I think it takes a lot of getting used to. It takes a lot of playing to get used to the handling, and even when you do, to try and have an impact and to try and make the most out of it, it's harder than it should be, especially for more experienced players. And I've watched quite a few players a lot better than me, and I can still consider myself fairly competent. Struggle with this vehicle, and as you can see there, I nearly went straight over into that over that bridge and killed myself there. So you have to be very careful about your maneuvering, and I think for a newer player, something like a Vanguard or the ELC even 90, it's so much better to play. You've got better view range, and a lot of the other light tanks at tier 8 have better penetration, and it's just more, they're more forgiving tanks basically, and it's a very unusual play style. It feels very foreign to be playing a wheeled vehicle. I know they will be coming to Cold War, and they said that they're thinking about making even more nations have wheeled vehicles in the future. But I just hope that they change the handling and the traverse and try and tweak it to make the traction a lot better, because it does feel very slidey. Sometimes it just feels like it jerks forward and slides the opposite direction that you're turning. I'm not sure quite what they can do with it. I think it's a traction issue, but yeah, enough on that. So if you were to ask me whether you should pick this up, if you're a collector, you're going to do it anyway. If you're a new player, I highly recommend you don't pick this tank up yet. And even if they do tweak it and it's a lot easier, I recommend that you play tracked light tanks and learn the sort of light tank spotting play style. Learn the spotting mechanic, so you go through the bush to spot, and when you pull back through the bush, wait till it's opaque, and then you can fire through it with all of the camo factor intact. And as you can see here, I'm just being cheeky here. I know I've got a gun line behind me. I'm going up to the ridge line. I'm spotting these tanks and then pulling back, trying to bait them around the corner. And I've saved some hit points to the end so I can take a shot and get 1 or 2 shots in and try and push my damage up. And this is the highest combined damage that I've had in this tank in, I'm not sure how many battles I've played now, maybe 30, 40, something like that since it's been released, and average I'm looking at like slightly under 2,000, maybe even lower combined. So I am struggling. A lot of the times I'm making mistakes like being too aggressive, or the tank jerks and I end up getting taken out. But yeah, I'm getting used to it, and hopefully they'll make some tweaks and it'll be more enjoyable. But yeah, that's the end of that replay there, where we finish with 2.3k direct damage, 2.7k assistance, only a first class. I haven't got the mastery yet, with 1786 base experience points, where we finish MVP and make a nice profit again. So that's my review of this tank. I hope you enjoyed it. Please think about this before you buy it. Maybe just wait and see if they change it. And thanks for watching. I hope you're all having a really good week. Let's see what happens when they bring in the tech tree of the French wheeled light vehicles next week, and let me know your opinion on this tank in the comments. So until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.